We have now come to our first big panel. Paula,
Hi,
arrived.
where are my panelists?
Yes, I'm going to call them
Follow
out.
me.
They may be a bit shy, but our first panel is...
We'll get them right out of that.
Yes, just lure them. It's the founders panel, where we will get Stefan Baxter, which is a founder and CEO at Activity Stream, Flamer EHF. Haukur Guðjónsson is entrepreneur. Arnar Laufdal Ólafsson is a CEO and co-founder of Captio. Kolbrún Hrafnkelsdóttir is a CEO and founder of Florealis. And Xiao Tian, CEO from TravelSwift and co-founder. And the guide to Iceland, he was speaking here before. And of course, we have Paula Gold, which will be moderating. She's an executive and consultant.
Yeah.
Paula.
Hi, everyone. Do we have energy left? I hope so. There's 2 more panels.
Yes, we do. Come on.
Hey, like you, I'm also wearing a local Icelandic designer. So my necklace is from Prime. It was a gift for my birthday, so I actually don't know who the designer is, but it's beautiful. Thank you. And the dress is from SES Design, which is not on Laugavegur, but on Borgartún. So
high five.
High five.
Yeah.
Came prepared. So I'm excited to talk to the founders, but we have a very limited amount of time. So we're going to kind of do the 140-character elevator pitch from each one of your companies. I know it's kind of an old reference because there's no character limit anymore, but you're right. That joke did fail. But let's just go through everyone real quickly. One thing that I do want to acknowledge is what I love about this panel is how diverse the companies are. So we have medicine, we have travel, we have nobody knows. Some sort of tech, but what I really want to emphasize is that we've talked a lot about tech today, but we also have a really great consumer goods market. There's a lot of smithing that happens in Iceland because it's a highly creative community, so a lot of just regular and luxury consumer goods. So I just wanted to reference that so we know it's tech, but it's also more than tech. So I'm just going to let you guys go.
So my name is Arnar, and I'm from Captio. We have the next generation of booking platform for travel, and giving the tour operators the capability to deliver new experiences to their customers.
Hi everyone, I'm Kolbrún. I'm the founder and CEO of Florealis, which is a herbaceutical company. We are focusing on developing and marketing registered herbal medicines for the Scandinavian market.
Hi, my name is Stefan. I come from a company called Activity Stream. We help businesses use artificial intelligence to improve daily operations and customer services.
Hi, my name is Xiao Chen. I'm the co-founder of Guide to Iceland, which is an online travel marketplace powered by the software behind it, TravelShift. We are a one-stop shop that wants to create value for everybody on our site.
Hi, my name is Haukur. I'm actually in between startups at the moment, but I've had various startups over the years. I started my first company about 12 years ago, but my last startup was Bungalow, which was in the tourism industry.
So a lot of what we're talking about today and the whole theme of the conference is scaling and growth. So when I was speaking to the panelists earlier during the lunch break, I was saying that when we got up here, I really wanted to just get to that point because there's a lot of startups here that who's really early stage, who's pre-seed, pre-funding, okay, who's like seed, in between seed and round A. So early startups. So we already know getting the idea and bringing it to fruition, but it's reaching those next steps that I think is going to be more valuable to the audience here. So I wanted to hear from each of you, as you've already gone through the idea process and now you're getting employees and you're getting customers, what was that journey for you? What did you learn from that? What helped you along? What held you back? Was it human resources and talent? Was it investment or no investment? Where were you between getting the idea started and getting to customers and sales?
Should I start?
Sure.
Actually, we are not gone to the point that we
They need to hear you on the microphone.
We are not yet to the point that we are getting customers. but it's a really challenging road to get there for a pharmaceutical company. Especially, you need a lot of funding in the start. But
Florealis has been in the news and talked about quite extensively in the startup community in Iceland. Maybe you can talk a little bit about why that is. Why are people talking about you?
Well, it's maybe not mine to answer, but I think it's because the pharmaceutical industry in Iceland is quite strong, but there's a lack of new startup companies. It's just a huge international corporations, but it's not has been like for the IT companies that there's a lot of startups coming out of that community. So I think we are unique in that point. There are some small startups starting now. I think that's one of the reasons.
How about you, Arna?
So I think first when we thought about forming this company, we had an idea. We wanted to, so I come from the hospitality industry, and Ragnar, my co-founder as well. And we had this idea on making a PMS, like a property management system for the hotel industry. We then went out and started to talk to the customers because I think it's all about the customers. You need to find the pain. And we couldn't find basically any pain with property management systems. So we like struck like a wall in that. So we decided to go back a little bit, went into professional services. So we have built our solution on top of Salesforce, which you might know.
Okay, so you're using an existing ecosystem to really drive.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really smart.
And
we heard a little bit about that with Tempo earlier and their Athleisure marketplace.
But then we, in this journey of doing professional services, we found that there was a huge pain, which I, of course, previously had known, but hadn't really thought about. But it was in making quotes, like these custom quotes. So from the hospitality industry I knew previously. And we had this idea, and we approached one tour operator here in Iceland and did like a prototype for them, and that got the ball starting to roll.
Nice. Yeah. How about the other couch, Stefan?
We have a minimum viable product to start throwing around some 3-letter acronyms. Adding customers later this summer, been going really well. Learned along the way, well, team is important. Talent attracts more talent. If you are not 100% at hiring, you need to do some firing, ultimately. Yeah. Funding matters a lot, but it's just a milestone. It's just a starting point in some, in much sense. So as an organization, we are really an imbecile. We're a small team of 10 people. We don't have the procedures, but thankfully, none of the people working at activity streams are imbeciles, so it kind of it comes nicely together. Yeah. So minimum viable organization, that's a new TLA. So we're trying to build that now, and we, thankfully the reception to our product has been really great. So we kid around with it, but we are really petrified that we could have a lot of unhappy customers.
Yeah.
So because building the infrastructure for onboarding and support is our next thing.
Is that the biggest challenge for you?
Absolutely, yeah. and I've been down this road several times before. And it's really easy. Under 12 people, really, really easy. You don't need all the procedures and all the infrastructure in place. But
so it is a bit of a human resource thing too, because you process and procedure.
Absolutely, and we fully realize that this is something that we need to take care of before we grow too big, because there is a point of no return. So if you don't have the minimum infrastructure in place, you'll probably blow it.
And Jajan, how about you? I mean, Guide to Iceland has had rapid growth and has had a lot of success reaching into new markets. So there had to have been challenges.
The thing that helped us a lot is being open-minded. So even though when we started as a really small team, the core team, But then the team members are all very different from each other. We're not really trying to find like the same person, the unified team, but rather we want to hear different voices. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we test and apply. So we find the best way. And coming from people with different background, we know we can have different ways of exploring instead of only focusing on one path. Because as entrepreneur, there are a lot of things you don't know for sure. And testing is really important. And having a really dynamic team helped us a lot. But then also, it's actually kind of a similar what stopped us, or maybe just like a little bit of annoying, is also red tape. And it's not about China, actually. It's about how it took so long to get visas to Iceland. Personally, for me, it took me 8 months to get here. Yeah. And I was surprised like, later on to think like back, like I didn't give up, because waiting for 8 months, not knowing what's the result is pretty like frustrating. But even now, like 2-3 years later, the red tape is still here, so that's kind of something that we can't solve from our own team, that we look forward that the environment here, the startup environment.
But that discussion has been a significant discussion in the startup community in general. There's a lot of initiatives focused specifically on the visa issue and importing the talent needed to help these companies scale.
People often here talk about how empowering women is really important, but then again, internationally welcoming all kinds of people is also very important, I would say.
I agree.
Yeah, I just want to add that when I was first starting off and I was reading about all these kind of startups, you know, becoming successful, growing and all that, I always had the feeling that they knew exactly what they were doing and it was all kind of figured out. But the truth is, when you actually go through the process of building up a company and scaling it, it's kind of like walking in the dark. You just kind of have to feel your way, and if you're lucky, you'll find the entrance to the next level. Yeah. If you're unlucky, you'll fall into a hole and, I don't know, die. So
way to be uplifting.
Well, that is the truth. I mean, I don't think we have to be scared about not knowing 100% what we're doing.
Making a crevasse analogy.
Yeah. You have to just be willing to explore and kind of admit that you don't know everything, but you're willing to try.
I think it's about having a big vision, having the right goal, and then just go at it. But you have detours, and that's how it happens.
Yeah. And so. What are your current challenges? Like, you've gone through some challenges to get to where you are now. What's in front of you, and what are the barriers that you're experiencing right now to the next level of growth?
I think for us it's about implementation of our solution. Okay. So we are now in implementation, for instance, for bigger companies than we've previously been engaging. Yeah. And we have acquired like new talent that is helping us with that. Yeah. But it's difficult for us just to manage and see how to formalize that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hand over the microphone, please.
My answer is simple. That's money.
It's money for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
We are quite satisfied with the setup. Yeah. And we have made some success regarding business partners. And just to revisit what Stefan said, like the internal processes, we have made a lot of effort to build the internal processes from day one, as we were few hundreds. Right. So even though I have to admit that I was alone in the company, I did not sit down by myself to go over the processes, but as soon as we were two, we worked according to system, balanced scorecard, where we measure ourselves, we report to the board, like we were not three persons, but many hundreds. So it's quite important that to.
So you're kind of implementing that like bigger than I am process very early on.
And it's a good experience to come from a big international company to be able to do that.
But we were talking, you said, the first thing you said was money, and since we have an investor panel coming up next, maybe we can like prod that panel a little bit. What is it about money specifically? Is it getting VC funding? Is it figuring out if you need VC funding even? Is it taking on debt to satisfy growth needs? What about money specifically? Is it just fundraising, or is it cash flow? Like, what is it?
Yeah, mainly cash flow, because we went through 2 seed fundings, and we want to acquire a certain goal before we go into the next funding round, and time is very limited. So to start the next funding round, you want to show the investors that
Yeah.
you used the
Yeah.
previous money to do certain
So are you running into Ingrid's point of 3 by 3? It's 3 times more expensive, takes 3 times more time.
Yeah, and also, we need funding to get to the point
Yeah.
where we are.
Yeah.
We just finalized seed funding,
Yeah.
and we're able to put the first product
Yeah.
to registration, and now we're starting the next round.
And how about you, Stefan?
We have a lot of infrastructure to take care of, onboarding, support and services, as I mentioned previously. For me, yes, it's about money, but it's really about how brave or risk adverse you get, because we think that we have a product that is at the right place and at the right time, so to speak, but we don't know how fast to pace it.
Yeah, and you're entering markets like Denmark and other markets, correct?
So the Scandinavian market to begin with, yes. And this is, do we put more people in integration and implementation and take them out of core development, or do we try to guard that? And how do we mix things up to make sure that the company is growing without neglecting, vitally important areas?
Yeah.
So a lot of challenges, really.
Jackie?
Okay, I think for our team, the problem is like sometimes we have this problem of moving too fast and wanting to move even faster. And then you do have to spend a lot of time like putting it into seeking funding. And for us, we did spend some time on that. And then we kind of went past that and just like grew faster. So right now, like we have 2 companies basically. Guide to Iceland is the travel side of the business, but then we have Travel Shift, which is software that's supporting Guide to Iceland. We want to bring Travel Shift outside of Iceland. So for us, we had a success story of Guide to Iceland, and we are very confident we can do that again and again. But still, we have to spend time to convince other investors that we can do this again. But then for us, for all the time we spend on this, we could just do a lot more by doing real work we are really like good at. So this is something we're struggling with. Like we'd rather to do the real work than putting the time in like.
And how do you define real work? Like how are you defining that? Because this is always a challenge I think with startups is like all of it is real work. All of it, like to get the funding, it's real work. To take care of the customers and acquire customers is real work. So how do you define those two?
I think. Well, every team, I mean, usually the entrepreneurs, they're probably not experts in financing. So as
I'm not.
Yeah, as the team, I was just saying, like, as the team grow, I think for entrepreneurs, they're still focusing on the business side of things, whereas they probably need help also in terms of the getting financing. So some kind of a help is probably later on they can have people like experts in this field who can help them in taking care of the process and all that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what we are doing right now, basically.
And with your companies, Haukur, like, especially even Bungalow, because it was the most recent one, what were, like, when you were in the middle of growth and scaling for each one, what was the next challenge for you?
Well, I just want to point out, like I mentioned before, so I'm in between startups now. So for the first time in many, many years, I don't have any problems, which is awesome. Because running a startup is basically always means that you always have some problems that you have to fix. The one that we had the most problem with was getting funding into the company, like so many other companies. But what we realized and what we learned very early on is that what we learned when we entered the North American market, and everybody there told us that if you want to get investors into your company, you have to start off with a sales pipeline of at least 100 investors, and then you have to work through that.
That's true, yeah.
Here in Iceland, we don't really have 100 investors to contact. So what I realized very early on is that we have to start looking outside of Iceland for funding, and you have to start that very early on, because I was able to create a very good connection with a lot of investors, but it was a little bit too late. If I would have started a little bit earlier, it probably would have gone much better. So starting to build that connection with the investors and work on that very early on, and with international investors, I think that will be the key thing.
That's a really great way for me to kind of wrap up the session too, because I was going to ask, what's your advice now for startups that are one step behind you, right? So if they're just getting seed funding or just getting their idea off the ground or just going for their Series A, what is the advice that you can impart on them? Like both a good thing and a bad thing. So there's the challenge. Like don't do this, but do this. Real quick, all of you. You have the microphone, so you have to start. Super quick.
I was trying to think of a clever answer, but
Yeah.
I think, think ahead, have your plan solid.
So the
Sorry.
do is to think ahead. What's the don't?
Do think ahead.
Yeah.
And prepare.
Right, but what's the don't? So you have to give them a do. So do think
Yeah.
ahead, and what's the don't?
Don't, if something is not working, don't try to fix it to the end.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just
turn.
have to find another way.
Okay.
You just gotta work your ass off first.
Yeah.
And then, don't take vacations.
So funding takes a lot longer than you expect. Prepare for it, because if you don't, you will lose your negotiation position. So make provisions.
So do make provisions and don't.
Give up, Wile E. Coyote style, just,
Yeah.
okay, Roadrunner, nobody, okay, never mind.
And I would say, due to the nature of business, you might be needing funding for different reasons. If your business really need funding to go further, seek funding. But say some people look for funding for confirmation. If you're able to really get past and grow on your own,
With sales.
sometimes you don't always have to just seek funding because everybody else is doing
So
it.
do think revenue first, and don't go for
Well,
funding
it depends
immediately?
on really the nature of the business, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, so for me, I would say do find the right people to work with. So finding the right co-founders with you is the most important thing you can do. Being a solo entrepreneur is very difficult to do, and I'm going to try everything I can to avoid ever doing that again, because it is very difficult. And so with the don't part of it, I would say just don't be afraid of making mistakes and getting to know failure, because that's part of it. So yeah, do find the right people and don't be afraid.
Thanks. Well, thanks everyone for the commentary. Thanks.